guys. Given that it's Friday night for most of us, Saturday morning for some, um, I will keep this part of how to love yourself short and sweet. It's a simple one. I want to talk about the things that it takes required to love yourself. And one of those things, one of the most important elements that I can add would be forgiveness. And that's a word that usually triggers people, especially if we are holding on to our old 3D narratives. So unfortunately, here's some things that we're going to have to take into account so that we understand how and why forgiveness is such an important part of the equation of how to love yourself. Okay, so first and foremost, God cannot be divided. Okay, we are non-dual. We are the one expressing as the many. And although that may not be true in our bodies, that is true in our spirits, in our minds, inside our narratives. So a lot of times when we have had difficult upbringings or situations or things in which we have been triggered, whether it was romantically, whether it was our childhood, it doesn't matter, whatever it is that has occurred. Forgiveness is going to be an element that's required in order to have a peaceful and magnetic personality. And a lot of people don't want to hear that, but see, from a non-dual standpoint, we have to understand what happened before we were born. So this is kind of the behind the veil answer as to why forgiveness is important. And I apologize to anyone that this may trigger. For me, it used to trigger. It used to be, considering I came from a very difficult upbringing, although I had many blessings, I was so lost in a lot of the pain that I was absorbing. And a few things that you have to take into account is that God cannot be divided, first and foremost. Your narratives are what is animating what's happening outside, and that what we incarnate has to do with the wounds that we have experienced. Whether we had good parents or bad parents is irrelevant, okay? There are still some wounds that maybe have been developed through these experiences or through romantic partnerships in the past or whatever has happened, okay, that has developed these wounds. Now, these wounds, if they are not forgiven, this is what's animating everything outside of us. So what's going to happen if we don't remember that our narrative is animating everything and that everything requires forgiveness, okay, is that we get lost inside the 3D, okay? But what's going to happen is these wounds are going to need to be looked at, and so people are going to do you a great service and they're going to hurt you. And it's going to hurt really, 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 really bad, okay? And these are those moments that are going to require the most forgiveness, because the reason that these things were required is because at some point we have to snap out of this autopilot of the stories that we tell ourselves, because these are the stories that are responsible for what is going on outside of ourselves. So these wounds, if they're unforgiven, then create more and more tumultuous experiences. So I'll give you a quick and supernatural experience of mine. For a long time, I've always been clairaudient, and I heard what I would call quote unquote spirit guides, and they were always telling me to forgive, and I was always telling them to go away, and they were always reminding me to forgive, and I was always telling them to go away. And it was a habit of mine where they would keep trying to warn me, and I would keep telling them to go away. And in moments of desperation, I'm like, have you any idea what they did to me? And I was so lost in that victim narrative, and that I could not forgive, okay? And it is not until you understand that you are all of these things at once and all of these characters at once, and these bodies are animated by the stories that you're saying inside, and that if you don't forgive, these things continue to repeat on autopilot until you wake up to them. So along with the answer I gave 2 days ago, where I said part of the answer was self-acceptance, the other part is forgiveness. This is a multi-part answer, okay? But forgiveness is huge, and it's not easily done, especially if you've been wounded very deeply, whether that has been romantically, whether that was been through childhood, whether that's been through other experiences, whatever may be the situation. All of these experiences require forgiveness. A lot of times what you'll figure out as you grow and mature, you'll realize that what has happened is we act in fear instead of love. So we act in a protective stance, and we react in a totally different way, and we're responding to things, and we don't even hear our own narrative sometimes. And so then what happens is the world appears to be attacking us. And so this can be a very difficult moment in which you are required to forgive yourself for what you didn't know, for what you inherited. You're required to forgive the people that have done these things. Even if you don't speak to them, it is good to make your peace. Even if you don't physically speak to them, or if they're gone, it's still important to make peace with these things. And this is a continual process. You will find that if you're triggered in life, you will realize that it's due to these triggers. And so they're always serving you, but this is one of those ride or die for yourself moments. Okay? It's another part of the formula, right? And it's a tough one. I get it. You know, I don't know how many people say this to you, but I speak from a non-dual standpoint where I say, if I don't forgive everything that has occurred, I will be trapped in my memories in the past, where I am trapped in a narrative that does not serve me. So then in life, I am stuck in survival mode, as opposed to releasing all of that, understanding that this is why I'm here, and rewrite the narrative so that it's working in my favor. Letting go of these things, knowing that it's always me, with 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 me. Me universally, me, okay? In the sense that universally, everything is you, okay? It's not separate. Everything is you. Everything is equally sacred. Everyone had to play the stories and the narratives, whatever it takes to wake us up within the dream. So that's an important part, or recipe, I want to say, of that, of self-love. I don't know how often it's talked about. I know that it's a trigger. It used to be a trigger for me, so I'm honest with you guys about it. It is a continual process, but I will say this, especially if you want children, okay? We give birth to our mothers. So make sure you're at peace with this. I know you don't want to hear that. We attract in our partners our fathers. I know you don't want to hear that. Make peace with that. Your relationships, all of them, and everything that has ever occurred is going to be on display at all times. So your aunts, your uncles, your every interrelationship you can ever think of are all going to be different memories of yourself. The more you're at peace with these things, the more you let go of these stories, and you realize that the reason that we chose these parents, we chose, keyword, before birth, we chose these parents because their wounds matched our wounds. And so at first, especially in childhood, we're carrying these wounds. Especially in childhood, we are comforted by the fact that they match our wounds. They look like us, so we're comforted by this, okay? Then in time, what then occurs, if we have not forgiven, we don't understand this, but if we have not forgiven, then these patterns get multiplied over time. And so then you will experience different levels of these same wounds over and over again until you make peace with yourself. So this is a huge biohack. Whether you like it or not, make peace with those stories. Realize that you can't separate. I know you want to, you can't. You can't separate yourself from these things. All of these things are you. They make you you. And if you don't value those things, you are not valuing yourself fully. And as hard as those experiences are, they still make you a phenomenal legend in everything. If you take a moment to appreciate those things, it's your uniqueness. That if you value it, and you'll see it's how you overcame these things, how much better you are in a different, totally different place. What made you you? When you start appreciating that in a total different light, right? Then it's not taking from your experience. But if we are resenting, if we have not forgiven, if we are still angry, if we're still calling this person that bitch, that this, excuse my language, you understand where I'm coming from. If you are still doing this because we are separating them, then we have not understood that the soul is technically looking at itself from all different angles. Parents are past life us with us now. Children are future versions of us. It's still always us from all different dimensions at all different times. It's always you with you with you with you. God cannot be divided. And when you understand that, then you understand that forgiveness is a huge part of that. And I know, especially I'm going to come from my standpoint, and this may not apply to everybody, but from my standpoint, coming from the pain that you experience because of it, I know how hard it is to let go of these narratives, but the freedom comes from letting them go. And it is a huge, important step in loving yourself. It's part of the work. It's part of the work. But when you do it, and you do it lovingly, and you develop an appreciation, you simply are at peace. When you're at peace, you are now someone that is magnetically drawing people in. People want to understand, what is it about you, right? You're drawing people in because you're at peace. You're not requiring anything. So your field is good. So now the people outside that you're animating are also reacting to this vibe. We're all doing this together. We're all reacting to the same vibe. But this vibe, we must develop it from inside. And it comes from an all is forgiven kind of attitude. And I know that one is hard, but it is a huge, crucial component, because in doing so, you discover that everything is you. And that's a tough one. It is a tough one. But like I said, if we don't, the forgiveness lessons get harder and harder and harder. Okay, something must snap us out of it. And so if you want to avoid the pain, the difficulty, the wrong, quote unquote, guy or gal, the painful ouch, let go of these narratives and begin by forgiving yourself, understanding that we inherited these things so that we can make something happen from them. And like I said, it's never about what has occurred, okay? It's where you are now because of it, okay? Celebrate that, be present to that, appreciate those things. But definitely let go of those narratives, because technically everything is you. So in not letting go of those narratives, you hold yourself prisoner to more and more experiences. And it will bleed into your life, into your social life, into your work life, into all kinds of things. Anything to get you to face these things. So it's important. It's an important step. May not be a favorite one, but it is an important step. It's required. I can't stress it enough. In doing it, you let go of the duality. You understand that everything served you. And doing that, in developing that sort of appreciation, it changes things for you. So you develop that kind of peace. It's an important step in self-love. Like I said, it's going to be a multi-part answer. First part was self-acceptance. The second part of this is forgiveness. This is the tough stuff. But you might as well do the tough stuff first so that you can be on the receiving end of the really cool stuff later, And it does happen instant. So take some time to think about this. that in forgiving everything, you are letting go of these wounds, you are letting go of painful experiences, you are rewriting the narratives, you are freeing yourself. You know, the thing about holding grudges and resentment, and this is something that I've learned only through my own experience, because I've had trouble letting go myself. I can only speak from that, right? Is that they move on and they continue with their lives, and you somehow stay stuck there. And one day you just kind of look up and you realize that the only one that trapped themselves in not forgiving was yourself. And it's a tough pill to swallow, but if you can swallow it for me, it sets you free. It really does. And so, and it is a huge component, you know, self-love spills over to prosperity in all departments, also in your wallet. So if things are not forgiven, you will find that you find that you might have more famine moments in your than feast. Okay. Because also finance is also emotionally driven. It's liquid. It's like water. Think of it like this. And so this spills over in that department as well. So forgiveness is a huge key to having prosperity in all departments, and self-love. It is a huge component. Like I said, I know it's a Friday night. People probably want to go out and have a drink or something or do their thing. Hopefully if they're not in lockdown, so I won't keep you guys. And I'll keep answering this question. It is a multi-level question. But if you're gonna do this, do it right. Take the shortcuts and do the work that helps you to develop the appreciation for yourself. It's required, because I don't know how many different ways I have to say it, but it's your inner narratives animate the bodies outside so that you can see yourself in every dimension at once. And if we don't understand that, then we're in for a hard life, because we're going to get upset about blaming some external narrative for behaving exactly as our story has dictated. And instead, if we can develop an understanding for our story and appreciate that instead, then that becomes what we start projecting out into the world. And you will notice that the 3D becomes a totally different confirmation piece than it is when we haven't forgiven. It's a little more tumultuous. I can only speak from experience. But yeah, so may not be the most popular part of the answer, but it is required part. I would say this is required homework if you are going to be attempting to focus on you, focus on healing yourself, focus on self-acceptance, focus on self-love. Then forgiveness of self and forgiveness of the entire universe at once is definitely required. And I'll be the first to say it's an ongoing process, because it's very easy to have moments in which we forget that we created the narrative, and that we're on the receiving end of what we have done. And so that can be humbling at times. Be open to that. It's a learning experience. I'm kind of blushing because I am no exception to this rule. But take that into consideration, okay? Forgiveness, huge component of self-love. Like I said, it's a multi-level answer. I'll keep answering this question every 2 days. I'm going to try and come on and discuss what's required to love yourself, so that the outside starts matching what you're looking for, especially if you desire, whether it's a specific person or you're not sure who you are trying to attract, but you do desire someone, or whether it's not about attracting anyone, but it's about perfecting the relationships you already have, because in understanding yourself, you'll understand what's going on outside of you. So in this, developing these types of understanding, your life becomes its own testimony and success story for having your partner, having a harmonious union, and having the type of patience required to navigate through these really painful wounds. Because the truth is, these ones are hard, and hopefully in facing and forgiving these things on a continual basis, you will find yourself freeing yourself in all departments, financially, romantically, in work, in everything. So I hope that helps, and enjoy your evening, you guys. Love you. Miss everybody. Thanks.